Welcome to English Echo Stories. Simple English stories to help you listen, learn, and feel inspired. Let's begin today's story. Have you ever felt like your world was falling apart? Like everything you loved, everything you worked for, suddenly disappeared? This is the story of Alira, a woman who once had a life full of comfort and routine. She had a cozy apartment, a steady job, and friends who laughed with her every week. Life was ordinary, yes, but it felt safe and enough. Then, in a short moment, everything changed. Alira lost her job, her home, and the people she counted on. She found herself alone, uncertain, and afraid. The life she knew was gone, and with it, her sense of security. But this story is not only about loss, it is about courage, hope, and the power of taking one small step at a time. It is about how a person, even in the darkest moments, can find herself again and rebuild a life she never imagined. As you listen, imagine standing in Alira's shoes. Feel the fear, the emptiness, and the confusion. But notice the small spark inside. The tiny flicker of hope that says, "I can try again." That spark, small as it may seem, can grow into courage, confidence, and change. Alira's journey will teach you more than English words and phrases. It will show you how to face loss, take small steps forward, and discover strength you never knew you had. Before the storm. Alira's life was simple, steady, and comforting. She lived in a small apartment in the city. The walls were plain, but she had arranged them with care. A small plant on the windowsill, a few photographs of friends and family, and her favorite books stacked neatly on a low shelf. Every morning, she would wake to the soft sunlight streaming through her window, make tea, and prepare for her day at the local shop where she worked. Her work was ordinary, but it gave her a sense of purpose. She greeted customers with a smile, helped them find what they needed, and felt satisfaction in a job done well. After work, she would meet her friends for a simple dinner or a walk in the nearby park. They laughed together, shared small joys, and talked about dreams. Dreams of travel, new experiences, and learning things they had never had time for before. Alira herself dreamed quietly, in her own small way. She kept a little diary, writing in simple English sentences she had been practicing. "I want to see the mountains. I want to learn more words. One day, I will have my own shop." These were not grand plans, but they were hers, and writing them gave her hope. She imagined traveling to new places, speaking English confidently, meeting people from around the world, and running a small business that reflected her personality and values. Life felt warm, ordinary, and safe. There were small challenges, of course, bills to pay, the occasional busy day at work, and moments of worry about the future. But nothing that seemed too big to handle. She went to bed each night feeling content, thinking of the next day's possibilities. Yet beneath this calm surface, the winds of change were gathering. Alira could not see it, but her world was about to be shaken. The routine she relied on, the stability she took for granted, would soon be gone. The life she thought she knew so well would be replaced by uncertainty and challenge, forcing her to confront fear, loss, and the unknown. For now, though, Alira lived in comfort, surrounded by friends, a steady job, and her small dreams. She smiled as she wrote in her diary, unaware that soon she would need all the courage, patience, and determination she could find to rebuild her life from the ground up. the day it fell apart. Alira was having a normal morning when the phone rang. She answered with her usual calm, expecting a customer or a friend. Instead, it was news that shook her to her core. The shop where she worked was closing. They could no longer afford the rent, and all employees would be let go immediately. Alira felt her chest tighten. The life she had depended on, the steady routine she relied on, had vanished in one phone call. For days, she tried to find another job. She walked from shop to shop, asking if they needed help, but the responses were polite refusals. Her savings were small, and soon the landlord called. The rent had increased, and she could not pay. Panic crept in as she realized she might have to leave her apartment. Her friends, busy with their own lives, became distant. Some offered a place to stay for a night or two, but their kindness had limits. Alira was alone, facing the reality that the comfortable life she once had was gone. Cold nights became her constant companion. She spent hours wrapped in blankets, listening to the rain tapping against the window, each drop echoing the fear in her heart. Hunger sometimes gnawed at her, and worry weighed heavier than any physical discomfort. Each morning she woke, unsure where she would find shelter or what she would eat. The diary she once filled with dreams now sat untouched, a reminder of the life she had lost. As the days passed, Alira felt invisible. People walked past her in the streets, unaware of her struggle. She wandered through familiar neighborhoods, but everything felt unfamiliar. Her safe world had turned into chaos. The laughter of friends, the warmth of her apartment, and the certainty of a paycheck were memories that now seemed distant and almost impossible to reach. Alira began to ask herself questions she had never faced before. Who am I without my job? Without my home? Without the people I trusted? Each question felt like a stone in her chest, heavy and sharp. She realized that the life she had taken for granted was gone, and she had to find herself again, not in comfort, but in the empty space left behind. Even in this darkness, a tiny voice whispered inside her, a faint hope that she could survive, that she could somehow rebuild. But the fear and loneliness were overwhelming. She did not yet see the path forward, only the emptiness around her. This was the day everything fell apart for Alira. Stability had turned into uncertainty. Support had turned into solitude. The comfortable, ordinary life she had known was replaced by fear, loss, and the weight of the unknown. Rock bottom. Alira walked the streets each day with no clear destination. Her backpack was light, carrying only the few belongings she could fit: a change of clothes, a notebook, and the small diary she had once used to write dreams. Nights were the hardest. She slept wherever she could find shelter: benches in the park, quiet corners of bus stations, or the occasional friend's spare room. But even there, she felt out of place, as if she didn't belong anywhere. People passed her without noticing, absorbed in their own lives. Alira felt invisible, a shadow moving among a world that had no room for her struggles. During the day, she searched for work, asking at small shops and cafes, but most places were already full or didn't need help. She felt frustrated, exhausted, and small. Each rejection made her question herself. Why can't I find even a little stability? What am I missing? Hunger, fatigue, and fear were constant companions, yet she kept walking, because stopping meant facing the emptiness of her situation. One afternoon, she ducked into a small public library to escape the rain and sit for a while. Inside, the air smelled of books and quiet. Children whispered to each other while flipping colorful pages. Adults read newspapers and spoke softly in English to friends or teachers. Alira watched, fascinated. People were learning, practicing, growing, and she remembered the dream she had once pushed aside. Learning English, seeing the world beyond her small life, finding her own voice. For a moment, her heart stirred with hope. She could almost feel the old excitement of discovering something new, the feeling of possibility that once made her write in her diary at night. But the thought was quickly drowned by the immediate pressure of survival. "I can't think about that now," she whispered to herself. "I need food. I need a place to sleep." Yet that spark, small as it was, refused to die. Something inside her remembered the joy of learning, the power of understanding words, and the independence it had once promised. Alira stayed longer in the library that day, watching people read, imagining that someday she could be like them again, learning, growing, speaking confidently. She left the library with her mind restless, a mixture of fear and longing. She didn't know it yet. But a stranger's small gesture would soon change everything, offering her the first real step toward reclaiming her life. The stranger in the library. Alira sat in the corner of the library, hunched over her backpack, feeling tired and unsure. Her eyes wandered over the people around her, children reading picture books, adults quietly practicing English, and volunteers helping others with lessons. She felt small and invisible, but also a faint curiosity stirring inside her. It was then that an elderly woman noticed her. She approached gently, her face kind and warm. "You look like you want to learn," the woman said softly. She held out a small book with simple English sentences and bright illustrations. "Learning can make you stronger," she added. Alira hesitated. She had not held a book in months, and the thought of reading aloud made her nervous. But something about the woman's calm encouragement made her accept the gift. Sitting back in her corner, Alira opened the book. The sentences were simple. "I wake up. I go to work." She whispered each word to herself, slowly at first, then with a little more confidence. It was not just learning a language. It was a taste of control in a life that felt chaotic. For the first time in weeks, she felt she could accomplish something small, something tangible. Each day, Alira returned to the library. She read aloud, repeated phrases, and practiced words she could barely pronounce at first. The elderly woman occasionally nodded or smiled, giving quiet encouragement. With every page, Alira's confidence grew. She began to notice that learning, even slowly, gave her a sense of independence she had not felt since losing her home and job. This small act, receiving a simple English book, became the first step in reclaiming her life. She realized that she could have some control, some power, even in a world that had taken so much from her. Each morning, she woke determined to spend time with the book, to practice sentences, and to slowly rebuild her voice. What had seemed impossible before, reading, speaking, and understanding, now became manageable, step by step. Alira discovered that empowerment did not come from grand gestures, but from small, consistent actions. The library corner became her sanctuary, a place where fear slowly turned into confidence, and where learning became a pathway out of despair. Small steps, big changes. After weeks of practicing in the library, Alira began to organize her days with intention. She woke early each morning, determined to make the most of her time. Her first priority remained survival, searching for work, sending messages, visiting shops. But now, she carved out hours each day to focus on English. She borrowed children's books from the library, reading aloud slowly and carefully. She listened to simple podcasts in English, repeating phrases and writing down words she did not understand. Her small notebook became a treasure chest of new vocabulary, sentences, and dreams. At first, the progress was slow. She stumbled over words, mispronounced phrases, and often wanted to give up. But she remembered the elderly woman's words. Learning can make you stronger. Each day, she pushed herself just a little further. She practiced aloud in empty corners, whispered sentences while walking through the streets, and repeated words until they felt familiar. The small victories began to add up. The first time she ordered coffee in English without fear, she felt a rush of pride. The shopkeeper smiled and repeated her order back to her, and she realized she had been understood. Later, she spoke to shopkeepers, neighbors, and strangers, testing her English and building confidence. Each interaction, no matter how simple, reinforced her belief that she could regain control of her life. Beyond language, these small steps transformed her self-esteem. Tasks that once seemed impossible, talking to strangers, asking questions, expressing ideas, became achievable. Alira began to smile more often, to feel lighter, and to carry herself with a quiet sense of possibility. Her days were still challenging, but each small action gave her proof. She was capable, she was learning, and she was moving forward. Through patience, repetition, and focus, Alira discovered that consistent small efforts could create big changes. English became more than a language. It became a symbol of progress, resilience, and her growing independence. Each sentence she mastered reminded her she could start over, one word, one action, one day at a time. The job interview. Alira felt both excitement and nervousness as she walked to the local community center that morning. She had seen a notice for a part-time position assisting visitors, many of whom spoke English. Her heart raced. Could she really do this? Her English was far from perfect, and she feared making mistakes in front of others. But she also remembered how far she had come. Weeks of practice, small victories in the streets, and the encouragement of the elderly woman in the library. At the interview, she sat across from the manager, her hands trembling slightly. She introduced herself, speaking slowly and carefully. She made mistakes, hesitated, and sometimes searched for words, but she also spoke with honesty and determination. "I want to help people and improve my English," she said, her voice steady despite the fear inside. The manager listened intently, nodding at her answers, impressed by her sincerity and willingness to learn. After a few minutes of conversation and simple tasks to test her skills, the manager smiled. "You have the right attitude," he said. "We will hire you. Welcome to the team." Alira's heart leapt. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of accomplishment and validation. She had earned something through her effort, patience, and courage. The yes she had been longing for was finally here, and it meant more than just a job. Her first days at the community center were challenging but exciting. She greeted visitors, helped them with questions, and used English every day. Even small interactions, giving directions, answering the phone, reading notices aloud, became opportunities to practice and grow. Her confidence blossomed as she realized that her consistent efforts were paying off. She was no longer invisible. She was seen, valued, and capable. Beyond the language, the job gave her structure and independence. She earned her own income, felt responsible for tasks, and experienced the satisfaction of contributing to something meaningful. Every day brought a sense of pride and joy, a reminder that persistence and small steps can lead to real change. Alira's journey had moved from fear and rejection to a small but powerful triumph. The interview was more than a moment. It was proof that she could trust herself, that her learning and persistence mattered, and that each effort could open doors she once thought closed forever. Finding her voice. Working at the community center, Alira discovered a world she had never seen before. People from different countries came every day, each with their own stories, struggles, and dreams. Some spoke broken English, some had just arrived in the city, and many were nervous to practice speaking at all. Alira saw herself in them. The fear, hesitation, and uncertainty she had felt not so long ago. Slowly, she began to speak more confidently with visitors. She helped them with simple phrases, answered questions, and offered encouragement. The first time she led a small English conversation hour for beginners, her hands shook slightly and her heart raced. But as she watched the participants repeat words, laugh at small mistakes, and gradually grow more confident, a deep joy filled her. She realized that her experience of struggle could now help others find their own strength. Alira shared her story openly with the group. She told them about the nights she wandered the streets, the fear of not being understood, and the small steps that had helped her regain control. Listeners leaned in, inspired by her honesty and persistence. She encouraged them to try, to speak even if it was hard, and to celebrate each small victory. The room that had once felt intimidating became a place of warmth, growth, and shared learning. Teaching others became more than a way to practice English. It became a source of purpose. Alira felt needed, seen, and valuable. She noticed that as she helped others, her own confidence continued to grow. Each day, she practiced more, learned more, and spoke more fluently. English was no longer just a language. It was a bridge connecting her to new friends, new experiences, and new opportunities. Her role at the center marked a transformation. The silent learner who had once hidden in library corners was now a guide, a mentor, and a voice of encouragement. Alira realized that finding her voice had given her more than communication skills. It had given her pride, independence, and a sense of belonging. Building the new life. With steady work at the community center and growing confidence, Alira finally felt ready to take another step. She rented a small apartment, modest and simple, but it was her own. The space gave her privacy, stability, and a sense of control she had not felt for months. She arranged her few belongings neatly, keeping her notebook, English books, and diary close by. The apartment became a symbol. She was rebuilding, piece by piece, a life she could call her own. Every day, Alira continued her English studies. She enrolled in online courses, listened to podcasts, and practiced speaking with her friends and colleagues. Each new word she learned, each sentence she wrote, reminded her of the journey she had taken. She also began studying for a community work certification, hoping to help more people like herself, those who had fallen and needed guidance. The work was challenging, but it gave her purpose, focus, and a vision for the future. Reflecting on her journey, Alira realized that losing everything had been painful, but it had forced her to find her true self. She had discovered strength, resourcefulness, and determination she had never known. The woman who had wandered the streets, invisible and afraid, was now capable, confident, and hopeful. Her past struggles were not shameful. They were the foundation of her growth, the reason she could empathize, teach, and inspire others. Alira's life was still modest, but she now knew her worth. She could handle challenges, solve problems, and continue learning. Each day brought a new opportunity to grow, connect, and contribute. She felt gratitude for the small victories, the kind strangers, and the moments of courage that had carried her through. This stage of rebuilding was not about wealth or luxury. It was about independence, skill, and self-respect. Alira had learned that a home, knowledge, and confidence were more valuable than material possessions. Her life was her own again, shaped by her choices, efforts, and perseverance. Final reflection. The narrator returns, speaking gently and directly to the listener. Alira's journey shows us that losing everything does not mean losing yourself. Even in the darkest times, a small step can light the way. Then, Alira's own voice joins, calm and clear. You may have lost something, maybe everything, but you can still find yourself again. Start with one step, one word, one small action. Her words are simple, yet they carry the weight of experience. The audience can feel the months of struggle, fear, and doubt behind them. Alira's eyes reflect both the pain she endured and the strength she has gained. Every sentence reminds the listener that rebuilding life is possible, that courage grows from small, consistent actions. As she walks through the streets of the city, helping visitors at the community center and greeting neighbors with confidence, the camera captures her transformation. Once invisible, she is now a presence of guidance, support, and inspiration. Children and beginners repeat phrases after her, and she smiles gently, remembering her own first awkward attempts at speaking English. The scene is warm, hopeful, and full of life, a visual proof that growth takes time but is always worth pursuing. The narrator continues, learning English is not only about words. It is about reclaiming your voice, your confidence, and your place in the world. Each word you learn, each sentence you practice, is a step toward freedom and independence. Alira glances at her notebook, filled with notes, words, and dreams. She opens it and flips through the pages, showing the audience the evidence of her journey, mistakes, corrections, and progress, all markers of growth. The final shots show her standing on a rooftop, looking out over the city as the sun sets. The warm colors of the sky reflect the promise of new beginnings. Alira breathes deeply, a quiet smile on her face. The library corner, the small apartment, the community center, all these places shaped her story. But the real change came from her own effort, determination, and courage. The narrator concludes, broken dreams can become new beginnings. Every challenge you face, every obstacle you overcome, is part of your story. Just like Alira, you can start again, grow stronger, and find your voice. Begin today. One step, one word, one action at a time. The story closes on Alira walking confidently down the street, interacting with people, laughing softly, and moving forward. The audience is left with a clear, hopeful message. No matter how far someone falls, the journey to rebuild and reclaim life is possible. And it can start with something as simple as learning a new word. Thank you for listening to Alira's story. Remember, no matter where you are, you can begin again. One step, one word, one small action can change your life. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to English Echo Stories for more simple and inspiring English stories to help you learn and grow. See you in the next video.